Okay, let's unpack a moment in musical history that was less about pleasant melodies and more about a psychological scream. We're jumping into Expressionism in music. This is mostly set in Vienna and Germany during well, the chaotic opening years of the 20th century.
It's a truly revolutionary period, not just for music, but philosophically. The whole mission statement for these composers was, in a word, rebellion. They were rejecting almost everything that came before.
And when you say rebellion, you really mean it. This wasn't music designed to be easy listening.
Oh, not at all.
It's not background music for a dinner party. It was made to shock you, to challenge every musical expectation you had.
And to force you to confront some deep emotional discomfort. For a century, music had been about structure, beauty, harmonious resolution. Think of those big, sweeping romantic scores.
Right.
Expressionists just said that kind of art was a lie. The world of the early 1900s, with all the industrialization, the social unrest, the shadow of war, it wasn't neat or beautiful.
So their art had to mirror the world's actual messiness.
Precisely. The goal was to bypass the surface and just represent the raw, deep, inner feelings of the human psyche.
And they really focused on what we often try to ignore.
Yeah, crippling fear, intense anxiety, profound sadness, that feeling of psychological distress.
It makes so much sense when you connect it to the painters from the same movement. The painters used these bold, clashing colors and distorted figures to show intense feeling.
And the composers were basically trying to create musical distortion to capture that exact same nervous energy.
So, okay, let's unpack the sound itself. If the goal is anxiety and shock, what were the technical tools they used? What makes this music sound so completely different?
The first thing you'll notice is the melody, or the lack of a traditional melody.
Right.
They completely rejected those smooth, singable lines.
So instead of smooth scales,
You get something angular, jagged, unpredictable. It might leap from a really low note to an impossibly high one all of a sudden. It mirrors that erratic, jumpy nature of psychological stress.
and that jumping, that harshness, is rooted in what we call dissonance. That's really the hallmark of the whole movement, isn't it?
Dissonance is the cornerstone, absolutely.
Yeah.
It just means that notes that sound like they clash or rub against each other are used constantly.
In traditional music, that clash is temporary, right? It's like a moment of tension before you get a musical sigh of relief.
Yes, exactly. But in expressionism, that sigh never comes. The clashing notes are sustained, and it creates this prolonged, grinding feeling of tension and unease. The tension is the whole point.
And it wasn't just the harmony that was unstable. It feels like the rhythm is unstable, too. When I listen, I honestly can't tell where the beat is.
That's a deliberate tactic. There's often no clear, regular rhythm, so you couldn't easily tap your foot or clap along. The whole structure feels fluid and chaotic.
And the dynamics, the volume, they're just as volatile.
Totally volatile. It changes instantaneously without warning. You might have an incredibly soft, almost inaudible whisper.
And then, bam! This explosive, shocking blast.
Yes. And they would push instruments to make these strange, almost screaming or distorted sound effects. It was all designed to mimic the unpredictable nature of sudden thoughts, of nightmares.
So if the music is pure psychological intensity, they must have needed to completely break the old rules. And that brings us to the central idea, right? Atonality.
This is where it gets really interesting. To understand atonality, you have to remember how traditional music works. Whether it's Mozart or, a pop song, the music always revolves around a home key.
A specific note that feels stable and final, like coming home.
Exactly. It gives you security. Atonality is the deliberate choice to remove that center. It means the music has no specific home key. They threw out the entire system of majors and minors.
And that lack of a stable center is what creates that tension. Your ear is constantly searching for that familiar resolution, that anchor.
But it never arrives.
So how do you do that without it just sounding completely random? If you take away the rules, how do you avoid just chaos?
That's the brilliant part. Their solution was radical. They decided to treat all 12 notes of the scale, every single black and white key on the piano, exactly the same. No note was more important than any other.
So no note could sound like the home base.
Precisely. And for them, this was an act of artistic liberation. It was the only way they felt they could truly represent the complexities of the modern mind.
And this whole liberation movement was really championed by one person in particular, Arnold Schoenberg.
He is the towering figure of this entire revolution. Operating out of Vienna, he truly believed the old system of harmony was. Well, it was exhausted. It had nothing left to say that was truthful about the 20th century.
And he didn't just have these ideas on his own. He built a movement. He gathered these incredibly talented students around him, and they became known as the Second Viennese School.
It was a collective decision to overthrow the musical establishment.
And you mentioned his early works were controversial, but that feels like an understatement. People hated this music.
The reaction was visceral, yeah. But Schoenberg taught his students that their artistic vision was everything. They had to be brave enough to follow their instincts, no matter what the public or the critics said.
Which changed music education forever, really.
It did. It encouraged artists to question every single musical assumption.
So let's look at his two most famous students, because they took these ideas in wildly different directions. We have Alban Berg and Anton Webern.
Right. He's kind of the bridge builder. He completely mastered Schoenberg's new atonal language, but he mixed it with a stronger connection to the emotional warmth of the past.
His music is still complex and modern, but it's also incredibly human, deeply moving.
It is. And he specialized in these tragic subjects. His most famous opera, Wozzeck, is a brilliant, unsettling example. It's about a poor soldier who's tormented and loses his mind.
And the music perfectly captures that descent into madness.
It's harsh and dissonant, reflecting the cruelty of the world, but it also has these moments of profound sadness, almost like traditional beauty. He gave listeners a little emotional foothold in a scary new sound world.
Anton Webern, though, went in the exact opposite direction. Where Berg embraced this huge drama, Webern focused on total brevity.
Webern was the essentialist. He wanted to strip everything away. His pieces are famously short, some less than a minute, but every single second is packed with intensity.
Yeah, really have to concentrate.
Total concentration. And he wasn't just interested in the sounds. He focused just as much on the silence between the notes.
But the silences are just as important.
Absolutely. They're just as meaningful. You might hear one instrument play a tiny cluster of notes, then silence, then another plays two notes. His style is often called pointillism, like tiny dots of sound just hanging in the air.
The movement wasn't just about instruments either. They also completely revolutionized the human voice with a technique called Sprechstimme,
which is German for speech voice. And that perfectly describes what it is. It's not quite speaking, but it's not traditional singing either.
So how does a performer actually do it?
The singer follows the written rhythm exactly, but they only touch the pitch for a moment. Right after hitting the note, they let the pitch fall or rise, sort of like natural speech. They don't sustain the pure tone.
The effect is so eerie. It sounds theatrical, dramatic, like an intense whisper or even a shout.
It's perfect for expressing extreme psychological moments. Schoenberg's Piero Lunaire is the famous example. It makes the voice sound almost haunted.
And they also changed the orchestra itself. They often used much smaller groups, which was a huge shift away from the giant romantic orchestras.
And that choice was critical. In a smaller group, each instrument can be heard clearly as an individual voice instead of blending into one big wash of sound.
It highlights the unique timbre, the tone quality of each instrument.
And they deliberately manipulated that timbre. They used instruments in their extreme ranges. Flutes soaring incredibly high, bassoons grinding in their lowest registers. They used more percussion, like gongs and bells, for cold, metallic colors.
And we often hear mutes on the strings and brass.
Right, yes. Mutes create a thinner, more pinched or veiled tone. All of this manipulation of sound color was designed to create a specific, calculated atmosphere, one that was strange and perfectly matched the psychological themes.
So Schoenberg starts this whole thing with atonality, which is total freedom. But that freedom creates a problem, doesn't it? How do you organize a piece of music if you can use any note at any time?
That is the perfect question. Without rules, longer pieces risk sounding completely shapeless. So Schoenberg did something amazing. He invented a new, self-imposed rule system to replace the old one. This was the 12-tone technique.
Also called serialism. It sounds super technical.
It is, but the concept is brilliant. He takes all 12 notes of the scale and arranges them into a specific ordered list. That list is called a row.
And that row becomes the DNA for the whole piece.
Exactly. The composer has to use all 12 notes in that specific order before any of them can be repeated.
Wow.
And to create variety, they manipulate the row mathematically, playing it forward, backward, upside down. It gave this highly emotional, dissonant music a rigorous internal logic. It was freedom, but contained by a new kind of order.
So what did the public think about all this? We know the initial reaction was not good.
Not good doesn't even begin to cover it. The public reaction was often violently negative. They found it depressing, noisy, an assault on good taste.
There are famous stories of concert scandals in Vienna, right? Where the music provoked such fury that people were shouting.
Shouting, throwing things,
Yeah.
yeah. The police actually had to be called to concert halls to restore order.
That's incredible.
Tells you something, though. The public did not want art reflecting the suffering and anxiety they were trying to ignore before World War I. They wanted an escape. The Expressionist gave them reality.
But despite the anger, a dedicated group saw this as the only honest path forward for music.
And that's its legacy. Expressionism broke down the walls of traditional harmony. It proved music could be built on other principles, opening the door for total creative freedom for every composer that followed.
And the techniques born here, the extreme dissonance, the focus on unsettling moods, are so central to film scores today, especially in horror and suspense thrillers. Expressionism taught us that music doesn't always have to be pretty to be great art.
So if we connect this to the bigger picture, considering how successfully the Expressionists captured intense emotions like fear and anxiety, what complex, nuanced emotion, something like profound regret or maybe deeply buried confusion, do you think would be the hardest to truly capture using only sound?
Good luck with your studies.